All right, so now that I've got all of these neighbors set up, one thing I want to mention is that when you are going to the right, when you do column +1, for example, you got to make sure that you are less than 1 less than the length. Basically, for 10 columns, I have to make sure that I am less than 9 in order to actually make sure I don't run off the right side of my array. Similar thing with the row. Anyway, so now that I've got all this done, so I can put in 3 things, and I take 1 step. Hey, cool. What about down here? Does that work? That's correct. That should be a stable shape. So one thing you might do to double check, first of all, make sure that your 3 thing works, and then try making sure that you get squares by just doing this. This should fill itself in. Boy, that's awesome. Anyway, so that's 1 step. So what if we want to make multiple steps? So what I'd like to have happen is I want the start button to continually run the step over and over and over and over again. Well, one thing that I might be tempted to do is just put in a while loop that says, while something is true, do step. Let me show you what happens if I do that. I no longer need that. So let's see. I need some sort of Boolean variable that keeps track of whether or not I'm still running. So up here, after I do the stop, let's do a Boolean running equals false initially. And then inside of here, the start button in the action performed, if running is false, because I don't want to start multiples of these, then I'm going to set run equals true. And while running is true, I'm going to take a step, which has repaint in it. So that might be the tempting thing to do. So if I do that, here's what happens. I'm frozen. I'm stuck. I cannot do anything else. So that's not cool. What happened? I am stuck inside of this loop, and it never gives my frame a chance to repaint. And it doesn't allow me to push any more buttons. So what has to happen is that this code here, this action performed, needs to be running at the same time that the step event is running over and over again. So what I need is something called a separate thread of execution. So I actually need to start another process that's running the whole stepping through my methods, but I need to make sure that I leave this section alone and don't get caught in an infinite loop. The way you do that you create a new thread, is you implement something called runnable. So runnable is going to complain because there's a method I need to add at the bottom, and the method I need to add is run. I think I'm going to move this up next to my action perform so it's a little easier to see. So the run method is something that I can use to start a new thread of execution. So what I'm going to do is, this stuff here is good, actually. I need to put it inside of this run method, however. And then inside of here, what I'm going to say is thread, I'll give it a name T, is a new thread. I'm going to pass it this method to run. And then to start the thread, I do t.start. So much like repaint, start is actually going to do some setup stuff, and then it's going to run a different method. And the method it's going to run is called run. So thread starts up the new process, and then it's going to call this run method eventually. And this is the thing I have to have if I'm a runnable thing. So once I am running, it's going to do this step event over and over again. But notice that this only happens once. It runs off the end of my action performed, and now I'm able to do another click. Whee! That's perhaps a little fast. Let's try slowing that down. So to make something pause, there's something called thread.sleep, which allows me to sleep for a certain amount of time. I'm going to do 500 milliseconds. Now, this is something that might cause problems, so I need to surround this with a try-catch block. So try to sleep, and the interrupted exception is what I get. I'm just going to catch all exceptions. I don't really know what might happen, so I'll just do that in general. So that's 500 milliseconds, which for those of you people that know how the metric system works, is half a second. There you go. If you want to change that, you always can. Make that delay less or more, depending on your preference. And then, what about the stop button? Well, this is actually pretty easy. All I need to do is say running is false. What will happen then is this thread will stop executing. It'll finish whatever step it's on, run off the end, and away we go. Doot, 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 doot. Stop. Doot, doot, doot. That looks like an awesome completed project without comments. Boy, do I need comments. So once I have all of that, and I have the comments in, I think I've got most of this project done. So just a quick reminder about the requirements. So the interface should have a drawing surface that you can click on to change cells. There should be the 3 buttons: step, run or start. Stop will stop it. And we're using 2-dimensional arrays to deal with this. And don't forget, commenting your code is part of the project.